As much as I love the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and as much as I wanted to hate the RG556 because Anbernic have been pushing out a lot of devices with lackluster firmware, I have to admit the RG556 is pretty much everything you could possibly want in a mid-ranged Android handheld. Just a little bit more power than the T618 chipset for PS2 emulation and a little bit of Switch emulation. A glorious screen for looking. Great controls, we'll nitpick on that now. Class-leading ergonomics, and in terms of software, although the RG front end is still pretty bad, it's kind of perfect for the sort of people who comment on my Android setup guides. This is just too complicated, I might actually send the device back. You literally press a button and your emulation is ready to roll. So with that, let's review the RG556 in light of the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, so kind of a comparison video, and then decide which device is for whom. Firstly, I must mention GoGameGeek, not because they tell me to, but because they have provided this device, and I am really grateful to them for supporting the channel on an ongoing basis. So click on their links below. I really like supporting them, and I do like supporting them because their shipping is really great. They use Buffalo shipping out of China, and so for everywhere, the US, including places outside the US, shipping is quite quick and it's free, included in the price of your device. So let's talk about the issues around the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. I've actually only done a setup guide of this device, and so I just want to talk about some of the things. This is my personal device. I really like this device, so let's start by saying that, but I'm going to point out some of the problems I see with this device and the concept of this device. So I think that this device should have been two devices. It should have been the Retroid Pocket 4, the successor to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and then the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. A bigger screen, the better sticks. Imagine the better sticks on here. This nice plastic. This plastic's okay, but this is better. So this nice plastic. If they could have just done this in their sort of Retroid style, I think they would have been off to the races. In the perfect world, I think it should have been two devices. A bigger screen, more power, chunky grip, and then it would have taken advantage. The bigger device would have taken advantage of things like streaming from your laptop or even from your Steamdeck, Switch emulation, 3DS emulation, PS2 emulation. All of those things would be better on a bigger screen and a higher spec device. Yeah, I just think, you know, when you're spending more money with more power, you want a little bit more for your money. And then for both of these devices, whatever reason, they are using DHL, and it is a fortune to get these devices to you. If they could just use something like Buffalo shipping, it would be so much cheaper for us to get these devices. So locally, if someone local says to me, I want one of these devices, I say to them, listen, are you sure? Because the shipping is just ridiculous. Let's talk about the device we're actually here for, and that is the Anbernic RG556. You know, one of the reasons I like getting devices from GoGameGeek is the fact that I'm not tied to the manufacturer. Because sometimes there's a bit of pressure to say nice things when the manufacturer sends you the device. Whereas GoGameGeek, as long as people are clicking on my affiliate links, they don't have an issue, you know, so I kind of get to say what I want here. And so firstly, I ordered this from GoGameGeek after they sent me this, is the Gucci style case. It's just ridiculous. And shipping it just as it is, it got a bit squished in the post. So it's actually been a bit ruined in the post. They should have stuffed it with something, but then again, I'd rather they didn't stuff it with something and it gets squished and I save the planet a little bit. But anyway, it's okay. It's not, the Retroid Pocket case is far superior. This is, I'm pretty sure they got TomTok or somebody to make this. This is a lovely case. It's got this smooth, it's very much like my TomTok case for my Steamdeck. A place for where my cloth goes. Very nice case for the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Whereas this, as funny as it is, it's okay, but it feels like a cheaper case, you know, one of the ones that they just found somewhere in a factory and they were like, cool, let's make a mold for the inside that fits our 556. And that's strange since this is kind of one of their flagship devices. This is a top tier device for them. So it is kind of weird. Anyway, the case, I got the case because I know my kids are going to adopt this device and it's going to come with us on holiday. So got the case. So the screen, the problem with OLED versus LCD is how it doesn't translate on YouTube. So let's quickly see the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. The reason I like it is they use an LCD panel, but it is kind of tweaked to look like an OLED. You see, so here the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, you can see the blacks are actually quite good here. Even here, I've been playing this and, OLED is fantastic and the saturation is good and the colors are really rich and wonderful and the blacks are truly black and all that is true. But now that I'm sitting in the studio, I wrote in my script, let's compare the two. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is not far off. And that's why when I talk to gamers and they're like Shem from Retro Breeze said to me, give me OLED in my veins. And that is kind of the gamer thing. Like OLED is better. And people have been commenting on my Steamdeck video how OLED on the Steamdeck is just wonderful. It also has better power consumption. Those are all pros to the OLED panel. But now looking at it in my studio, there really isn't much in it. Yeah, the colors are different. This has got a yellower hue to it, like a warmer hue to it. This is a cooler hue. But other than that, there's not much in it. The big thing here, to me, I know a lot of people are going to go, but Adin, OLED is fantastic. And it really is. Like it really is in real world, using it every day. It's wonderful. But I think if they had just tweaked a high quality LCD, I don't think there would have been much of a difference, except for maybe battery life. So there's that. But what we really are talking about here is the size. Like if you measure here, you've got like that in screen sizes, like a little bit on a screen goes a long way. That little bit of distance there, that tiny bit of distance there makes a huge difference. And we'll talk about ergonomics and size and travel friendly and all that kind of stuff now. But what the RG556 loses with the sticks mainly, that's the main gripe I have with this device, it makes up for in the screen, and the ergonomics, which we'll talk about just now. So the size is a huge thing. And here, just because I'm obsessed with the Steamdeck at the moment, obviously I've also got the etched glass, which washes out the image a little bit more, but colors aren't as vibrant, saturation isn't good, the blacks are more gray. It's, this is a better screen, smaller but better screen than my Steam Deck. This is a wonderful alternative to a Steam Deck if you have a nice computer at home and you want to stream games to a device. This is okay. However, the Achilles heel are the sticks, and we're going to talk about that later. Okay, we've got it on 50%. I want to do a low light test on the screen. Now, if we go all the way, now OLED is supposed to be very good with this. And yeah, you see, so the light emanating from the screen, if that makes any sense, isn't very strong. So OLED is amazing because even though the color and everything is there and the detail is there, there's not a lot of light pouring out of the screen. So OLED is fantastic for that. Now back to a sort of bright-ish situation. And then the other side of it is OLED is supposed to be very good for bright situations. So as you can see, the surroundings have gotten a lot darker because I've had to bring my camera down extreme amounts. So it's very bright. I do this on a regular basis. Someone said I need to start a spreadsheet for this information, which is probably true. Once I go back to this, after all those screens, this is a lovely, lovely screen. And it's like, if you're a big fan of just things looking beautiful, it's worth it just for that, really. It is really lovely. Okay, moving on. So moving on to the sticks. I know that quite a few reviewers have spoken about how they aren't very nice joysticks and that they've replaced them with other joysticks, better Hall sensor joysticks. For retro gaming, I haven't seen them to be an issue. Where it starts to become an issue is with more 3D gaming, if you head into GameCube and those sorts of platforms where sometimes you start to use a second joystick, these sticks become a bit of a pain in the ass. Because even at the point of Dreamcast, we started to get analog triggers and really nice joysticks. So, these were designed for the Nintendo Switch, which, Aish said the other day from Retro Handouts, they can get away with it because it's got really good gyro on it. These devices are more affordable devices, but you could compensate for a lot by having really good joysticks. And that's one of the reasons I really, really like the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, is the sticks. And the 4 would be the same with these really, really nice joysticks. And I said, the Retroid Pocket 2S, I said, it's a brilliant streaming device. It's just too small. This is still pretty small. I was streaming The Walking Dead from my laptop to here until my Steam Deck arrived. I was actually thinking about it now. The screen on this is better than the Steam Deck as well. So I was having a really good experience streaming The Walking Dead to this. And that's a lost opportunity here. I know this for a fact because I've tried to stream with these joysticks, and a lot of the games you just can't do a lot of the moves. Racing games, the steering is going to be a pain in the butt. These just aren't great. And I must say, like, I think about these things that I'm going to make a big deal of. I've mentioned this in previous videos, how some things I don't make a big deal of because there's so many other good things on the device, and it completely compensates for that, and it's not such a big deal. This is a huge deal. If you like streaming, if you're buying this device, so if you're buying this to not have a Steam Deck because it's so expensive and you want to get this, you've already got a nice laptop to play games on, so this can be a streaming device. It's got a nice big screen, beautiful screen for streaming, got a lovely D-pad, talk about the buttons now, but these sticks just are complete epic fail in that regard. In every other respect, as a retro gaming device, it's fine. Like, you'll get away with it. But this is not just a retro gaming device, and that's where the problem lies with these sticks. It is what it is. I need to make a big deal of it because I think it is a big deal, especially if you are going to be streaming your games with this. And then I'm not going to do an audio test, but just to say, both of these have downward firing speakers through a little slit in the bottom, and that is not acceptable. If we look at the real estate, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro gets a pass because there's not really anywhere. You could put a grill there, put two speakers there. You could put a grill there. You could put a tiny grill there. I changed my mind. They don't get a pass. They definitely have space for speakers. There could be a grill here, like there. Okay, not there, but they definitely could have put speakers facing upwards. And this is something that I often harp on about. It's a bit of a pet peeve for me, but you can have bad speakers facing upwards and it sounds great, or good speakers facing downwards and it sounds terrible. So it makes a huge difference. Okay, so buttons on the RG556. Let's just focus on the RG556 for a second. So I think it was Retro Tech Dad who was like, the triggers are amazing, and they are in terms of resistance. In terms of resistance, these are really nice. They feel like an Xbox-ish controller vibe, but the problem I have with these, in terms of when you get a higher end device like this, high end, like a mid-range device like this, you're not just going to be playing retro games on here. And when you wrap your finger, that catches your finger. So for longer gameplay, that does get irritating there. And so maybe if you hold it like that, then it's not an issue, and they do feel great if you hold it like that. But yeah, it is a sharp edge here. Compared to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro that wraps around beautifully like this, these triggers are just so comfy. On a smaller device, there's a discussion to be made about that. And the resistance isn't that great. They're quite floppy compared to the RG556. So, but yeah, comfort-wise, these are definitely better. And then shoulder buttons. So on the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, we've got, let's just quickly compare it. We've got very clicky, but very responsive buttons until you get to here. Then it starts to become a problem. These are smaller, more clicky, but responsive throughout the whole range of the button. So very clicky. Actually, like it's a little bit annoying. Anyway, I do find the volume button to be too recessed to the point where I can't always figure out where the volume is, but it's got a divot here, so you do get used to it over time. These function buttons have got a nice dull thud to them. So they're not too clicky, that's quite nice. And then action buttons, D-pad, like whether you like this smooth glossy D-pad, I don't know, but it is very nice. It's got a nice retro mushy membrane under there, so it's got like sort of this modern feeling with a mushy membrane underneath. These joysticks, as much as I've harped on how terrible they are, in retro gaming they're actually quite nice. And then these action buttons got a nice little bit of travel on them, nice firm rubber membrane to them. Anbernic really do make great buttons, and I've yet to find one of their devices that I don't like the buttons. And then quickly to compare to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, we've got dome switch D-pad, and it's quite sort of floppy. It's a preference thing, but I prefer that. It's got these excellent joysticks. These are also a dull press, and then trigger buttons, as we mentioned, are quite good. Anyway, all that to say that the buttons are laid out really nicely. A bit of a fingerprint magnet here, but other than that, really, really nice. And you're not going to go wrong with this device on buttons. Okay, so feeling in hand, sort of ergonomics, feeling in hand, and the aesthetic. So let's take a moment just to enjoy how beautiful this device is. I didn't think I would like it as much. The plastic is quite plasticky. But other than that, like this blue see-through, being able to see through the back there, there's no weird looking components underneath it. It just looks really pretty. These lights you can turn off in the drop-down menu. Very, very nice looking device. And then once you get it in your hands, it all kind of just makes sense, you know. It's got this lovely grip here. Your hand goes in there, finger goes there. And you suddenly feel like you're holding something that's more expensive than what you paid. And that is something special. The smoothness, you know, I was like, when it first arrived, the first impressions were really good. And I was like, this feels great. The plastic is way better than I expected. But then I picked up the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and I really do prefer this higher quality matte plastic. It obviously doesn't have the grip, but it feels better. The plastic feels better in the hand. Once you start using it on a daily basis, you are, like for someone who has been using the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro a lot, it becomes very apparent that this is not as carryable. This is not something that you can, that's why I got the case, because I can't just pop this in my pocket. If my son says, hey dad, can I play it at work, at my wife's business? I can't just chuck it in my pocket. That is the trade-off of having this bigger screen. Whereas this has got a smaller screen, is more pocketable, is easier to run around with, but the second you grab that and then you grab this, you're like, okay, where do I put my hands on this thing? It doesn't have a place to put your hands. It is nice to hold. I really like holding this device, like I've mentioned. I think this personally is my favorite of the two as a personal choice. I have to just concede that having to buy a grip to make this device ergonomic does seem a little bit strange when this thing is available. But costing aside, I prefer this. I prefer having the grip as an option. It's a tough call, you know. I think if you are playing this section and stopping and starting and playing it again because this is the part that really bothers you about this sort of Sophie's choice here, I think you've just got to ask yourself, how much do I appreciate a big screen? Because you're losing pocketability and you're losing like the sticks from the Retroid Pocket 2 4 Pro. And that's why I'm not a reviewer who says that it's an easy choice between these two, because it just isn't. Okay, then let's quickly run through the firmware, because I haven't done a full setup and I haven't worked on a full setup guide here. But like I said, for beginners, for people who comment on my setup guides, this is ridiculous. I can't be expected to do all this work. Watch this. Emulation. And there you go. So here's your main menu. You go in to all your different systems. There you can see it. It kind of guides you through. Press X to scan if you've added new games. All your systems are there. If you buy it with a preloaded card, you're going to have a whole lot of games to play. If you go into a system and you press start, you can search. So this is how I got to just say search, Darkwing Duck, select Darkwing Duck, new game. And in you go. So that's really handy. So emulation is kind of just covered. It's quite a simple system. Album art scraping isn't there, so that's the huge downside. But other than that, it's all set up, and especially if you have a preloaded card. Where the trouble does come in with Anbernic devices and any of these devices are emulators. So Anbernic preload a lot of old emulators, but they do work, you know, like there was an old version of Ether SX on here. Dolphin MMJR is here for, I think, GameCube and Wii. There is a version of Citra here, but this is an MMJ version. Also, it's a performance version, but I think you might be able to get away with some games using that if you can find a version of Citra before they were shut down for your 3DS games, because this is a lovely 3DS emulator. But yeah, a lot of old emulators on here. And that brings me on to my next thing, is that this is a wonderful Android gaming device. Specifically, I have really been enjoying Dead Cells on this device specifically. You know, with all the shortcomings of these sticks, I have really enjoyed using the joystick and playing Dead Cells on here. I kind of hope that devices like this motivates developers and companies to develop more for Android, because it's very limited what you can play to its full. There is screen mapping. You can use the little screen mapping thingy to map buttons in a game that has on-screen buttons, which is okay sometimes, but it doesn't always work well. So I'm hoping things will develop more for Android. Imagine proper games being released for Android. It would be quite a thing. So using it as a console is pretty cool. So here's a little dongle that you can use. This is a cheap one on Amazon. I'll put the link below. And I've been using this for my iPad for years. It has HDMI out, it has a USB-C for charging only, I think, and then for a peripheral. So you could plug in a 2.4 gigahertz controller in here. You could plug in a HDMI and have it as a TV thingy. I also rigged up my Bluetooth controller. The only downsides there were some Android games wouldn't let me use an external controller. I don't know what the deal was there. And then some retro systems, you have to go into RetroArch or into the emulator to map your controls. I did say that you press a button once and emulation is all there, but it isn't actually. So let's go for an example to SNES. This was actually set to a standalone core, SNES 9XEX Plus. While it is okay, there were some controller mapping issues. It wasn't mapped correctly and all that. So RetroArch is nice because it goes throughout the board. Most of the systems you use can use RetroArch, and then you've got a menu system that is uniform throughout. I would just recommend getting a RetroArch core and saving that. And then another little issue, for instance, I went into PSP and I had to go into controls and remove the on-screen overlay because it was set for some reason. So that, little quirks like that, it's not completely pick up and play, but kind of. So I want to preface this by saying I am not condoning piracy or anything like that. I'm purely doing this as a performance test to show you, because this is something that I was into before Yuzu and everything was shut down. And I just want to show you, because I was so amazed at the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and I thought it was because of the processing power that it could play Super Mario Wonder. And this has a lower spec processor, and in setting it to high mode, I'm able to play Super Mario Wonder here. The thing, Switch emulation has been shut down and all that kind of thing, so you lose save states and all that. That's not really what I want to get into here. Unfortunately, I didn't save my previous game test, so I'm right back at the beginning. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you're not losing a lot. So my opinion in the beginning, we haven't mentioned the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro in a while. My opinion in the beginning when I got this was, why would you want to get a lower spec device with crappy joysticks? But the thing is, with Yuzu being shut down, with PS2 not really getting much development, there's not much more in it, and I was excited about getting 3DS going. My Sonic generation still doesn't play on here. So there's a cap on retro emulation with the processing power. And there's a cap on what you can play, what you can do with these devices. You're future-proofing yourself with the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. That's what you're doing, but you're getting a smaller screen. Whereas here, this is just doing what is possible right now with retro emulation on Android. That's what I think it is. It's like they've got a processor that's able to do everything that you can do for retro emulation right now. So the point I'm trying to make with emulation on Android right now is that you're not losing a great deal moving from a higher spec chip like the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro to a lower spec chip like the RG556, because PS2 emulation is limited by EtherSX2. 3DS emulation is limited by Citro being shut down. Switch emulation, we're not allowed to talk about it, but has been shut down. All the higher end stuff has been limited, and so you're not losing out that much by using a lower spec chip on the RG556 in terms of Android emulation. Where this becomes interesting is you can bump up your resolution. You can take PSP and jump it up to 8x on the Adin 2 and make it look incredible. Those sorts of things, and you'll be able to squeeze out a bit of performance on things like PS2 and GameCube, that sort of thing. But overall, in general, you're not losing out. This has been set up. The RG556 is kind of the ultimate Android gaming device right now for emulation in terms of what Android can do for us. In terms of Android games, we're also limited because there aren't a lot of Android games out there, and that is just the reality of it. So I'm going to get into the weeds with this device, put a whole lot of GameCube things on. I'm going to set up the front end and all that sort of thing. So look out for that, and I'll have more to say about that. But in terms of sort of the Sophie's choice, in terms of the performance between these two, you aren't losing out that much with this device. So if that is something that's holding you back, I'd say don't let it hold you back. As I've mentioned a few times in this video, the Retroid Pocket 4 Plus is my personal favorite. I bought it for the channel, and so, you know, the expense of the grip and all that kind of thing isn't that important to me, and I prefer this overall. I just enjoy it. It's more compact, it's easier to use. But if I was spending my hard-earned cash, let's say I saved for a year, and this is what I could afford, I could either buy this, or maybe I have a little bit more and I can buy this, and I have to choose, I would choose the Anbernic. Now, let's put ourselves in different situations in terms of, let's put cost aside for a second and say you have a small device like a Miu Mini Plus or the RG556. That's all you own right now for retro emulation, and you want something a bit beefier that can do more things, I'd say get the Anbernic. Then let's say, for instance, you have a Steamdeck like me and you have a little emulation device, something cheap, something small, and you want something in the middle, then I would say the Retroid is better for you, because then you've got a powerful pocketable device to take around with you, and when you're home, or if you really want something fancy, you can take the Steamdeck with you. And then you don't feel like you're losing out because you didn't get the fancy grips. You've got the fancy grips on your Steamdeck. And then if you own the Steamdeck, you own a Miu Mini, you own other things like me, you own multiple devices, then we need to talk about your life choices. All right, so let's actually talk about the device we're here for, and that is the Retroid Pocket 556. Watch this. I've mentioned in this video that the Retroid Pocket 3, 4, what is this?